Alrighty, if you hear my voice, it means you're in the right building for today's Investment Summit. Please come to the front to grab your seats. I think it's our lovely friend Beck who's very chatty at the front. But we will get you to all come forward. Come on forward and grab your seats right near the front. We are about to begin, and we've got a lovely lady at the back who's manning the door. Thank you so much for waiting for our guests as they arrive. All right. Hi, my name is Sanya. I'll be your host this morning, and I'm excited to share some of the inside of who we are, what we do, and why we are running today's event. So, what I might start with is I'll get the clicker, and we'll go to the beginning of our slide deck. It's on the stage, even better. So, for those who haven't met our fabulous speakers yet, you'll hear all about them, and you'll meet them in a moment. So, from wherever you're sitting, you'll see our slides on view there and there. So, hi, I'm Sanya. I'm the founder of Talent Academy. By trade, I am a public speaking coach. It means I help people get on stage, camera, podcast, any kind of presentation, and I particularly love emceeing. Today, we are emceeing for the Investment Summit, the first inaugural Investment Summit on behalf of Pastor Abby. So if you'd like to chat with us individually, we will be at the back of the room towards the end of the event. You'll see our tables, and you'll be able to engage with every speaker one-on-one. Just as we are starting, does anyone own one of these? Yeah, fabulous, brilliant. There's a nice little button on there for silence. Let's use it. So put your phone on silent for the duration of our event, just out of respect for our speakers. Quick question while we are laying the ground rules here. Has anybody invested yet? Great, we've got some savvy investors. Yes, Mum, I know you invest. Brilliant. And who would be interested in learning how to invest? Okay, you're in the right room. Even the people who have invested are still putting their hand up, so that's good news. We could learn how to finesse the game and how to do things differently. You'll have 3 separate perspectives today that will all interlock. We will be talking property. We will be talking alternative investments and also protecting investments. And we will also be talking from Pastor Abby's perspective about investing and protection in property overseas. So for those of us who have done this before, you might get a new perspective. And for those who are brand newbies, this is going to be a crash course at an entry level. We do have some catering that will come up later. There's a drinks table, and bathrooms are down there on the left. Thank you again for hosting us for the Redeemed Church of God. Now, I have got the privilege to introduce our fabulous thought leaders. We are starting with someone who I love to call a dear friend. He is also responsible for the fabulous door prize. So I see someone filling out the slips as they're arriving right now. But if you haven't done so yet, there are door prize slips. They are at the back of the room. It means that you get to enter to win Michael's fabulous door prize. So let me introduce the genius that is Michael. So Michael is the founder of Equidel Property. Equidel Property does have a table. I'm stitching you up here. Equidel does have a table at the back of the room, and you'll hear some of his insights in a minute. He has formulated and refined something he calls the Equidel Property Analysis Matrix. This matrix is used to objectively assess properties from around the country, so you could invest anywhere around Australia, to help the everyday Australian make an informed decision before they buy property. He's been in this game for 13 years, and he uses data-driven science behind what he does so that an investor becomes an informed investor before they buy their first property. I'm very pleased to announce our first speaker, Michael Sampson.
Thank you, Sanya. Good morning, everyone. Good to be here this morning. Firstly, I'm just going to run through a bit about Equidel. We're an investment firm. We've been around 13 years. We help people invest in property properly. We're a bit conservative in our approach. but that's because we want to protect people. Property is a long-term game. We want to help people grow their net portfolios over the long term. So, I don't know where I'm meant to be pointing. Here we are. So there's multiple investment strategies that you can look at with property. This might be a little dry because a lot of the presentation is going to be numbers, but I'll try and keep it a little lighthearted throughout the presentation. We can look at developments where you're buying land and then you're subdividing and selling them off. That takes a lot of high capital to get involved. You can do master plan developments. Again, we're talking 20, 30 million. Or we can look at what most Australians consider as the safe, savvy investment strategy, which is the buy and hold strategy, which is probably what I'm going to talk about a fair bit today. So let's get straight into it. Before I start anything, I'm not a financial planner. I'm not giving any financial advice, so don't make any decisions based on this presentation. I would suggest having a chat with Arthur if you are looking for financial advice after the game. He can talk about a whole myriad of different asset classes. Me, I can only talk about property. So, buy and hold. What is the structure of buying and hold? So this is a fairly straightforward start to the presentation. If we're looking at a property, I'd just say it's around 700,000. Who here's got 700,000 to buy a property? I don't know why I'm putting my hand up. Anyone? Oh, you got 700K? Yeah, no. So I don't have 700K in cash in the bank. So we need someone to buy this for us. So that is going to be the bank. But the good part is, even though the bank buys it for us, we get to own it. How good's that? But there's two other elements within the investment property framework that we need to consider. And it's very similar to what you would call a business and how a business would operate. You would have income, and not only would you have income, you'd also have expenses. So what are the components underneath the income and expenses, I hear you ask? So we have rental income, which is great. We were just talking with Ezekiel before about the Adelaide property market and how there's not enough stock on the property market, and those rental incomes are getting pushed up and up, which is great for those that have got property here. We've also got depreciation and negative gearing. Who's been hearing about negative gearing in the news over the last 2 or 3 months? Yeah? There's a fair bit going on. So if you're looking at new properties, negative gearing is still applicable. And what is negative gearing? It's basically claiming the loss of the property if you need to service it out of your own pocket in the short term. What is depreciation? Similar to when you depreciate your car, if you use it for work, for your work, you will claim the loss of value against that. So while land increases in value, the bricks and mortar goes backwards. So the government at the moment, and I say at the moment, who knows what they're going to do in the future, they'll give you some credit towards your taxable income. Then expenses. So we have maintenance expenses, and maintenance is, with new property, a lot lower than a second-hand property, so that's always a good thing with new properties. We've got insurance and rates and taxes. Then we also have property management. So again, Ezekiel's your property manager around here, so if you need someone to look after you, he's your guy. We do have one more component within the expenses. Can anyone guess what that is? Insurance is up there, yep. So the biggest part of your expenses is going to be your bank repayments, your interest, correct? Yeah. So that's going to be a big part of it. So with all this whole structure, you're looking, the bank's financing it, you've got your income, you've got your expenses. What's your part of it? Well, your part of it is that you get to keep the profits. So just to recap, the bank finances the property, the income and the expenses. So the income services the expenses. You might need to chip in a little bit there. But then after that, you're the one as the owner who gets to keep the property. Now, with the buy and hold strategy, it is a long-term game, and it is the kind of thing where you're just putting wealth aside over and over. And it's a really good way to grow wealth long-term as well, bit by bit. So does that all make sense? Yeah, good. Next slide. So why property? Well, what you can do with property, you can leverage. So as you can see there, the bank helped us finance the property, but what does leveraging mean? Well, let's run through it. Leveraging is the tool that's used to grow wealth with property. The way this has worked, and here's an example of how leveraging would work. Just say you had 200,000 of cash in the bank. And that 200,000 grew by 5%. After 12 months, how much has that 200,000 grown by? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the interactive portion of the presentation. 10,000, that's right. So you've now grown that 200,000 by 10,000, which means you now have 210,000 in the bank. Looks pretty good. Cash rate's not 5% at the moment. So how does leveraging work with property then? So you use that 200,000 with cash or equity. We then borrow another 500,000. There are costs involved with this as well, but I'm just keeping it simple for the sake of the presentation. And then we purchase a property at 700,000. So 200 deposit, 500K loan, 700,000 property. However, what we're going to look at here is that we're going to look at the property growing at 5% per annum. So my next question, which I know you're going to answer, is how much equity has this new property generated? Someone say 35,000? Yep, correct. 35,000. So you've basically created another 35,000 by using the power of leveraging into property. So after the 12 months, your property is now worth 735,000. Happy days. So what are we comparing here? We're comparing $200,000 in cash or borrowing that 500,000, using the 200,000 deposit and buying a 700,000 property, and it's the difference between having 10,000 in return or 35,000 in return, which is a 5% return. However, this is the point I really want to hit home, especially for young investors out there. Your percentage of return is not based on the total value of the asset. Your percentage of return is based on what you put in. So you only put in the $200,000. So if you're making 35,000 on 200,000, is that 5%? Nope. It's 17.5% return on your money. Investors that understand this structure are the ones that succeed long term. If you want to know more about the value of leveraging, I'll have a chat afterwards with you, but that should wrap up the leveraging part of property. So we know the property structure now. We're going to borrow some money from the bank. We're going to buy a property. We know that the leveraging works into the property market. So what's the last thing we need to do? Find a great location to buy. So where should I invest? So I'm just going to run through some the common mindset of first-time investors and what I tend to come across when people speak to me about property investing. I want to buy where I live, which is nice, but what is the data on that location? How much growth is really potential in the place where you live? It may not necessarily be the right location for growth. However, you might love the area and you want to drive past and see the place, which is one thing that people want to do. They want to keep an eye on their property. So my father-in-law bought a property once, and he bought locally, and he wanted to keep an eye on the property. And every time he drove past the property, he had a deal with the tenant that you weren't allowed to have a pet on site. Guess what was in the backyard? There was a dog at the property. So he's reached out to the property manager and said, look, we need to do an inspection because they've got a dog on site. And our lease agreement, this is back when you had a choice, the lease agreement said you can't have any properties. So the property manager booked in a day, 14 days time. I think it's about 14 days, is that correct? Before you can get access to the property. So you can't just rock up. So under the tenancy agreement, you have to have 14 days access. So by the time the property manager rocked up and saw the property, do you reckon there was a dog there? Nope. And then the next day, when he drove past, guess what was there? That's right. So keeping an eye on the property may actually end up doing your head in, more so than anything else. So it doesn't necessarily work. And it also means you're emotionally investing. We might move into the property later. I encourage people to treat property, and I mentioned this earlier, as a business, not something that you would include into your lifestyle. If you keep it as a business, it means you're looking at the pure numbers. You're taking the emotion out of it, whereas you might not want to live in the type of property that is actually going to work for you as an investment. Because quite often you want nicer, higher ceilings, better finishes, and this, that, and the other. And in some cases, to buy a property like that, you might be overcapitalising and you might not get the return on investment. So keeping that emotion away from the investment is a good move. And I want, I want my friends and family to rent out the property. I've got an 18-year-old daughter. I can't get her to clean her room. Do you reckon I can get her to pay rent? I wouldn't think so. So renting out to your family, whilst it's a really nice thing to do, and I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying you're probably not going to get the return on investment that you otherwise would if you kept it as a business and rented it out to someone separate. That all make sense? All right. So what should I consider as far as locations are concerned? Well, this slide, the next two slides, you've got some real gold nuggets on here, so feel free to get your phones out and take some photos. That's fine. But what drives demand for accommodation? Population growth. So South Australia over the last 12 months, according to Australian Bureau of Statistics, have grown by 1%. The national average about 1.4, 1.5%. plansa.sa.gov.au. It's a really good website as far as looking for areas of growth and areas that are going to have strong population growth over the next 15, 20 years. And with that demand for accommodation, well, people need places to live. So you don't want to have a property that's sitting there vacant, so you know people are moving there, and that helps drive growth. How do I know the property market isn't oversupplied? Good question, Michael. So the percentage of investors. So what I mean by this is, according to the 2021 census, 30.6% of the Australian property market is renting. So we use that as a national benchmark. So if I go to a property market and there's 45 or 50% of the market are renting already, that's a fairly oversupplied property market, and you're also in danger of investing into a rental ghetto. If we look at a property market that's just say 25% rental market, then you've got a strong percentage of owner-occupiers. That also, you're investing, if you invest into a market around 25% or less, you're investing into a market where a lot of people are moving there and they're living, they're looking after their houses, they're looking after the streets. It's a very different community than those areas that are 40 to 50% rental market. So we use that as a bit of a benchmark as well. How do I know it's a good suburb? Probably as well as looking at the percentage of renters, social housing is a big one as well. So the national average is 3.6% according to the 21 census. I nerded out a little earlier this week on Tuesday night with filling in my census. I love census data. I don't know if anyone else did. Sorry. But yeah, so there are suburbs in Adelaide which have got 18 to 25% percentage social housing, which really makes a bit of a difference as far as the makeup of the socioeconomic demographics in the different areas. And the reason why I talk about this is historically areas with lower social housing perform better long term. So if you link item 2 and 3 there, quite often you'll find if you keep low rental market, low social housing, you're setting yourself up for success as far as being in a good suburb. Will I be able to rent the property out immediately? Now, even though I have this at number 4, this is the first thing I look at when looking at a property market, the vacancy rate. What is the vacancy rate? It's basically the amount of properties which are available in any property market at any given one time. So the national, or I guess the vacancy equilibrium is around 2.5%, 3%, and that generally means you have the same amount of properties on the market as people looking for properties. It's fairly well in balance, and you might take about 8 to 10 weeks to get your property rented out. If the vacancy rate's around 2%, it might take 4 weeks to rent out. If it's 1.5%, then it's probably renting out in just a couple of weeks. If it's 1% or lower, you're generally going to have about 20 to 30 buying groups coming through your property on the weekend because there's no other stock available and everyone wants to rent your property out. The reason why this is good is they outbid each other. Even though it's illegal in South Australia to outbid each other, is that correct, Ezekiel? People still do it. So if you're in an area with low vacancy rates, you know that you're going to set yourself up for success as far as rental yields are concerned. All right, about to go into the next slide. Whoever wants to take a photo of it, take it now. Okay. Oop, one more. That's right, houses versus townhouses and apartments. So this is, I won't drag on this for too much longer. Torrens titled properties versus community titled properties. So Torrens titled is where you've got the house by itself, it's a standalone. Community titles, it's generally part of a community or a strata, or where you have to pay strata fees and you've got common driveways and common land. It's not a standalone, and you normally have to apply for to the body corporate to be able to do anything to your property. Historically, Torrens title properties have performed better than community titles, and basically, in this world, God's not making any more land. So the best investment on earth is earth. So Torrens title is where you can actually get land in your portfolio, because that is the asset that actually keeps increasing. Come through. No one's looking at you, it's okay. All right, almost wrapping up here. So what are the key behind in investing? So some of the key takeaways for today. Number one, look for low vacancy rates. That you know you're going to get rented out. It doesn't matter how good the property is, if you can't get it rented out, it's no good. So make sure you're in a low vacancy rate. Low supply. So I was just chatting to someone about this beforehand. If you're in a market which has got low supply, then you're in a position of knowing that it's going to be able to grow and also rent out well. One of the things we've looked at probably over the last 3 to 4 years, especially in the Adelaide property market, is the amount of stock that's come onto the market. And as you can see from 21, 22, 23, there's been a decrease in stock on the market. There's a whole range of different reasons why this is, but because there's a lack of supply, those that are looking to buy property have got less to pick from, which means that's driving up the property prices in South Australia. So this is the one key, and if you jump on the SQM research, I'm going to put up some links for you to have a chat, or jump on and do your own research as well. But SQM research is a really good site to go on and look up things like this, amount of properties which are on the market, the amount of what the asking prices are, and also what the vacancy rates, etc. So it's a really good website. But you can see if you're in an area of low supply, you're going to have continual growth. Entry point. Mark Borer says, all investors is about your entry point and your exit point. Don't buy high and sell low. Buy low and sell high. It's pretty straightforward. Know your numbers. And this might mean you need to have a chat with someone like an Arthur, who's the financial planning expert around here, and having a chat. I'm happy to have a chat as well, especially if it's specifically related to property. But knowing your numbers is the key takeaway. And target locations with diverse range of knowledge economy employment. I don't have another hour to talk about knowledge economy employment. I think Sanya will get upset with me. But it's basically don't invest in areas that are reliant on one single industry. Make sure there's a diverse range of industries, and make sure there's knowledge economy employment, i.e. healthcare. Doesn't matter what happens globally, if you're near a healthcare facility, you're generally going to be in a good position to know that your property is going to be in demand at some point. So that's a fairly simple one. All right, in summary, leveraging is the tool to use to invest in property properly. Property investing needs to be treated as a business. Remove the emotion. Your future self will thank you for it. And search for undersupplied markets with ongoing demand and Torrens title properties, as I mentioned before. And use free tools. Here we are. So SQM Research, write that down. It's a really good site. ID Profile as well. You can look at the data which the census publish, or ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics. There's some really good areas. There's also one more option here, and this is my only sell part of the presentation. You can call Equidel, so you feel free to do that. And just one final thing, which I think is really important to anyone who gets involved with investing, is sharing your wealth. Giving back. I feel like I'm preaching to the converted in this particular room, but I find that's a big part of anyone who's created wealth over their lifetime. Giving back is a huge part, and a big close to my heart as well. So that would be great. Now, I know we've got questions afterwards, but if you did want to contact Equidel at all, feel free to take a photo or a QR code. And thank you so much for your time.
Kindly. Thank you so much, Michael. Told you there were geniuses. That's the first of 3 geniuses you'll hear from today, and it's an absolute pleasure to host. Now, question. Did you hear something useful? Good. That's exactly what we want to hear. Now, the better thing is Michael's not running away at the end of the event. I'm going to hold him hostage at the back at his table. We've got seats for you and seats for him, so you can sit, chat, ask all your questions while he's here. Is that right, Michael? Fabulous. Now, you've heard the property angle. You've heard about what you can do and how data-driven insight is such a valuable perspective to have. I'm on the recipient end of this. I sat down with Michael once and I was very excited because I found a farm. Like, look at this farm. What if I cut it into like 35 blocks and blah, 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 blah. And it's the stuff that you don't know. You don't know that you don't know. His insight, he goes, wait a minute, pulls out his laptop. Data says no. And it was such a valuable, because my passion would have just bought the farm. But my brain said, talk to Michael. So thank you so much for everything you do. Now, you've heard the property angle, which is, of course, a valuable perspective. Here's another perspective, something else you should consider, not just about risk and super and protection, but alternative investments as well. All sorts of things come from Arthur Panagis. He's the founder and principal of FMG Wealth Strategists. That's what he looks like. He holds a Bachelor of Business, majoring in accounting, and a diploma of financial planning. He has worked in the financial services sector for the past 14 years, following 28 years across corporate accounting and business ownership, including operating a software franchise in the hair and beauty industry. Doesn't have a lot of hair at the moment, but he did have some good success there. Altogether, Arthur has been an ambitious business owner for more than 35 years. Since 2022, he has completed more than 600 hours of study into Bitcoin, digital assets, monetary history, and currency debasement. Today, Arthur will present Protecting Wealth in a Debasing Currency World, exploring how investors may protect and grow their wealth as the value of traditional currencies continue to be challenged. A round of applause for Arthur.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Sonia. That was a great presentation, Michael. Okay, so let's start. But before I start, welcome to everyone. Welcome especially to people from the African community, because whenever I see people from the African or South American community, I say, welcome people from the future. And the reason why I say welcome from the future, because they know better than anybody. Oh, now I've got to go backwards. Give me a moment. Okay. They know better than anybody what debasing their currency means and the value of the unit of account that they have from those parts of the world. So, let's get started. Whilst what you're about to hear may be amazing, it is not financial advice. So, this is only for general info, educational purposes only, does not constitute financial investment, legal and taxation advice. So just be mindful of that, please. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance, and all investments carry risk, including the loss of capital. So bear that in mind. Now, we're going to start off with a quiz. First up, who would take $3 million today or a single cent doubling every day for a whole month? Put your hand up if you think. Who would take the $3 million? Only one, very clear. Okay, and what about the 1 cent doubling every day for a month? Absolutely. Okay, well, all right. You are right if you said doubling every day for a month. Now, what do you think that 1 cent would grow to for a whole month? Can I just get a couple of responses maybe? Anyone want to have a guess? No? Okay, all right. There's a book on offer. If you want a free book, there's a book on offer if someone just has a guess. Could you yell out, please? Oh, okay, oh, no, you got that. All right, well, I'll save you the pain. 1 cent doubling for a whole 31 days comes to $10,737,418.24. Now, it's very interesting. On day 30, it was at $5.37 million, and even earlier, you can see at day 29, it only got to $2.58 million. So this is the power of compounding and how amazing it is to get to that number. In fact, the whole first 30 days did not achieve what that last day did. So if you pick up anything today, remember the power of compounding. Albert Einstein called it the eighth natural wonder of the world. Now, let's get started. So 2009 is what we a lot of people think was the sort of beginning of the changing of money. It was when the GFC happened back in about 2008, so 2007 to 2009. But it was when, banks got into trouble, there were bailouts, there was enormous amounts of money printing, and it was a terrible time. But there was also one other thing that happened back on the 3rd of January 2009. It was when Bitcoin's first block was mined by a pseudonym of someone called Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, for him, it was something that he started and left, and no one has ever heard of who that person is ever since. What I would think is probably the ultimate form of sacrifice in respect to giving something away and then never hearing from him again, never hearing of him again. So why does this matter? Well, with currency debasement, it's very gradual and slow, but over time, it makes an impact in 3 areas. Firstly, purchasing power. So purchasing power is, and as we would know, you go to the supermarket and you buy groceries, you see here, and fresh fruit and meat, how expensive it is. And so that's where it hits first. That's where it appears first. Retirement income, so whether that's people having money in cash accounts or term deposits or fixed income and bonds and so forth, they are struggling to keep up with the money that people need to live a lifestyle, especially if there's something that they're retired on. And thirdly, probably where we're going to spend most of our time in is asset prices, because this is where it shows up mainly, where the value of homes go up, property, shares, and so forth. And this is where it comes really evident. Now, who would say property has doubled in the last 10 years? Yes, absolutely. Now, for it to double, it only needed to do 7% a year. So we have something called the rule of 72. So 7 into 72 means something will double over a period of time. And you can see here at 2%, it will take 36 years to double. At 12%, 6 years to double. We've got a benchmark here of 8%. But there's a very important number here, close to 7%. It's 6.7%. We'll call it 7%. But it's the supply of money that expands over time, gradually. And as you'll see here, that the money supply has been growing by that sort of number, which means that every 10, 11 years, it doubles. Now, that's the good news, because it's great, like when you have property and assets that rise. The bad news is that if you've got money sitting in cash and not earning any interest or very little interest, it's actually halved in value. So if you started with $100,000 sitting in a bank account, and then 10 years later, that $100,000 is there physically, or shall we call it, but it's actually it's been reduced by half to $500,000 or $50,000. So money is debased over time if you're not keeping up with at least the expansion of it. So here's a good example of the American US dollar, which is the strongest currency in the world. And you can see over 100 years, it's been debased nearly 90-odd%. And this is the strongest currency in the world. Some important points in here. In 1933, President Roosevelt declared gold, he criminalized gold. So people if you had gold back then, it could be confiscated. In 1971, something very important happened is when President Nixon decided to depeg gold from the dollar. So money was there from that point on, was not backed by anything. And so that, as you can see, it's gradual demise. And in 2020, when COVID hit in the US, they expanded the money supply in that 1 year alone by 20%, which is huge. So what are the signals here to look out for? We all hear about something called CPI. A lot of people call it CPI, but in essence what it is, it's a basket of goods that tells us how much things are going up at each time. Unfortunately, that basket of goods, they keep making it things that aren't of a lot of value in there. What it doesn't do is doesn't have things then like property, shares, things that are going up with value. And so there's a big difference here. So what I'd like you to always remember, or try to remember, is Don't look at the CPI number, look at the number that things are going up and expanded in value. Now, here's a really good example. If we went back to 2009 all the way up to 2020, money has doubled, expanded to a point of that 11 years, so it's grown by approximately 6.7%, so it's doubled. But if you look at the underneath graph for CPI, it's probably gone up about half that amount. And in essence, what we see over time is that there's a gap between the two of about 4%. And in essence, we could call that wealth tax. In other words, you're just not keeping up with the supply of money growth. And that's why assets are really important. And Michael's talked about investment properties. That's a really important part of the equation here, is to be in things that are growing. Now, what does this mean for a portfolio? Well, a portfolio could be like investments, whether it's shares or so forth. But if we looked at things that are affected, well, cash definitely is affected. Now, cash is important, of course, to have cash reserves. We only have to read The Richest Man in Babylon book that goes back 5,000 years, and it was really important to have 90 days worth of reserves, whether it was food, water, wheat, and money. So really important to have some cash reserves. But as you can see, that you can't have too much in cash because it's being eroded away or melting away. Bonds, they're well under pressure because they're not generating enough income to keep up with the supply of money. But what is working? Well, real assets are resilient. Michael again talked about property, and you'll hear again from Abby about this. But it's really important because what property and commodities and infrastructure and so forth, they have a tendency to reprice and keep up with that and just sort of nudge ahead of that number. And then you have other things that are growth assets, whether it's technology things, scarce assets and the scarcer the asset, whether it's property or whatever, you'll find that they can outpace the growth of that money. Now, here's an example of what that may look like, and something for you to consider in the future. If you could imagine the core index in the middle, you may call that like your super fund that's made up of international shares, Australian shares, US shares, infrastructure, and so forth, but surrounding it with things that will keep your portfolio resilient. And again, we talked about the importance of property because it's tangible assets. That's why it's important to have property in the mix. But there's other things in there too, like gold, which is a monetary hedge. There's Bitcoin, that's digital scarcity, which I'll come back to. There's cash and reserves, really important to have some reserves because always for opportunities. And then there's an area called innovation and longevity. Now, it's really important to always have an eye in the future because in America, we have this thing called the S&P 500, which is the 500 largest companies in the US. Now, 7 of them are called the Magnificent Seven that have made all the money than the other 493. And these are companies like Apple and Amazon and Microsoft and Google and so forth, because at the end of the day, technology wins. So it's really important to keep that in mind. One thing I wanted to touch on there was also innovation in relation to longevity. Now, longevity is really important because we are coming into a convergence of autonomous vehicles, robotics, battery storage. Obviously, we know about AI, which is digital intelligence. And this is all important, but there's also one other thing called longevity. Now, Ray Kurzweil, the father of AI, says that within the next 10 to 15 years, we will hit something called a longevity escape velocity. Now, what that means is that for every year that you live, you'll be able to add on another year because of the advancements in healthcare and technology in the way things will be able to treat diseases and cure things. You only have to go back to the 1930s and 40s. People were only living to 40, 45 years old, and now look here, 100 years or 80 years later, we're living into our 80s and 90s. It could be quite possible that you could live well past that into the hundreds quite easily with the advancements in technology. And what that means is we have something called longevity risk where you could outlive your money. So again, important to diversify your portfolio. As we head into the last bits of this, I wanted to look at one of those opportunities, which is Bitcoin, in relation to through 3 lenses. Again, this is not all about Bitcoin. It's about making it part of the equation. Now, Bitcoin is something what we think is an asymmetric opportunity, meaning for a small investment, it has a large potential. And I'm going to quickly look at it through three lenses. One is what share of global market. One is its comparison to gold. And the other thing is adoption. Now, if we could imagine the whole world assets total somewhere in a range of $900 trillion, this is US dollars. The numbers could be out a little bit, but we can see here things like gold, cars, collectibles, fine art, stock market, real estate. You can see real estate's about a third of that total value. And what normally happens with assets, we normally say that about half of them make up a utility value because you want to live in a house and so forth. But the other half is what we call store of value, and this is where people put money in these sorts of things. And if we was to say that 450 trillion, which is half of that, is a store of value, and then said, well, what if 10% of that went into Bitcoin? We can easily see with 21 million coins into 45 trillion how you could end up with a price of somewhere around $2.14 million for Bitcoin. Here's through a different lens. Bitcoin is a competitor to gold. Now, these numbers might be out a little bit too, but you'll get a good feel of seeing how the largest companies in what they're worth, including gold at the top at the moment as as an asset by market cap. Bitcoin is about 2 trillion compared to gold at about 20 trillion. Now, could Bitcoin actually get to gold at 20 trillion? Quite possibly, because it's digital gold. It can't be confiscated. It's obviously, technology. It can't expand because it's fixed supply of 21 million. And so you could see if Bitcoin today I think was $90,000 Australian, but even at 100,000 10x, you can see how it could get to $1 million per coin. And lastly, I think the most important is the adoption trajectory. Now, back in 1990, when the internet started, and the graph on your right, you'll see the adoption curve of the internet and overlaid with where Bitcoin started and its rise there. We are very early in what we call the adoption trajectory, probably 8 to 10%. And if there's 400 odd million users, could it get to 4.4 to 5 billion users? And that's a 10x. And again, why we see there's an opportunity there. So just back to the core satellite, it's not all about one or the other, it's about diversifying, including property in the mix and some of these other diversifiers that are around, say, your core satellite or core offering of shares and so forth. And to wrap up with, what's really important here is that it's all well and good building wealth, but you must always keep in mind the structure of how you build things. And here's a good example. This is out of my book, The Art of Building Wealth. And it basically shows 5 structures within under this banner. You can see operating. So if you're running a business, you normally keep your operating business separate. And again, when I'm talking about this, you normally do this sort of stuff with an advisor, an accountant, especially because accountants set up structures, and obviously a lawyer, commercial lawyer. But with an operating structure, when you run a business, you never keep your assets from that business in the same entity. They're always separate. You always keep them separate. So if something goes wrong, they're separated. Superannuation is another structure. It's a very tax-efficient structure, as we know. For right now, it's obviously a low-tax structure and can be protected. And then the property side of things, a lot of them are done in a separate structure that Michael shared around property, and Abby will too. Important to keep them in a separate structure, not in your own name. And really, the last structure there on is what the non-risk taker of a family normally looks after. So if it's a family home, it's normally in the non-risk taker's name. That might not be possible if everyone's in business, but it's something to keep in mind into separating these structures. So, in closing, preserve, diversify, and discipline. So it's really important to preserve that purchasing power so it's not being eroded away, and remembering those assets, including property and other things that are keeping, holding value against money expanding. Diversifying is really important, and we showed that course of super, for example, of different things, of shares and so forth, surrounded by the diversifiers to keep ahead of the game there, and then stay disciplined, because there's a lot of noise at the moment, and there is a lot of the time, and it's important to make sure that you don't listen to the noise and just stay the course and just keep doing it. Finally, there's a QR code there. You can get a copy, a digital version of my book, The Art of Building Wealth. We do have another book that Debbie and I co-wrote together at the back if you want to catch up with us after, but please take a copy of that. On that QR code, there is you can do a link to catch up for a 15-minute chat, complimentary, 15, 30-minute chat, happy to do that. But thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it. Amazing. All right, again, did you learn anything new and valuable? Yeah. Some people are like, yeah, there was a lot there. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of big numbers, but all of that, like he was talking about, that diversifying and having a proper mix. You've heard property, you've heard alternative assets and shares, etc. There is another perspective. Now, again, you will have a table at the back of the room where you can sit down with Arthur, ask as many questions as you like. He will be here for the afternoon to chat to you and share more insight. Now, we have another fabulous perspective to share today as well. Let me introduce you, and to some of you this might not be news, you might actually know who this is, but I have some people in the room who don't actually know who this is, so let me introduce you to our fabulous third speaker. So, Abby Doherty is a Nigerian legal practitioner, licensed Australian realtor with 20 years advising diaspora families on cross-border property investment. He is a #1 international best-selling author in 6 countries. The Diaspora Property Formula, which I have a copy of, it's fabulous, and the founder of the Diaspora Property Academy. He's built the academy after watching too many hard-working Africans abroad lose life savings to fake titles, phantom agents, and family land disputes that were preventable with the right system. He is closing out today's session with a piece from Australian Wealth, most Australian wealth conversations skip, which is how to actually protect the money that you send home. A round of applause for Abby.
Thank you very much. Very good talks we've had, and I'm sure we are all learning so much today. The diaspora refers to Nigerians, Africans, and whoever is not within their immediate domain. And this is a very important aspect. So I'm going to be looking at the diaspora wealth angle. Now, I want you to imagine 2 families. One in Adelaide, one in Lagos. You want to invest in those 2 locations. And when you are investing in Adelaide, just like we've just learned today, you can see that the first driver to you is processes, paperwork, verification, good systems. Now, when you are going to be investing in Nigeria, you usually forget all those. You move from processes to relationships. You move from paperwork to my uncle who knows somebody and knows somebody. And that's the pathway to lose money. So, imagine someone investing $70,000 just on WhatsApp voice note rather than processes, not checking title papers, not asking questions. Now, today we're going to be looking at a formula that will help you. And that is the diaspora property formula. It is based on 3 basic premises: plan, pick, protect. if you memorize just those 3 words, and I think that's one of the reasons, the simplicity is one of the things that made the book go all over the world viral. Because this formula works in any place. The plan, the picking of the location, and the protection of the investment. And I'm sure if you've listened to all our speakers today, you will see that you can see the formula playing. You have to plan before you invest. You have to know how to pick the right location, and you have to know how to protect your investments. So the diaspora property formula, I'm just applying it to a location now, but it's global. Plan, pick, protect. It always works anywhere. So the diaspora property paradox is that people neglect the processes. They move to relationship. They do not focus on the paperwork whenever they are investing. I do understand that we are a communal society, but this is business we are talking about, and businesses should follow processes. You know, just like Michael is saying, you have to remove the emotion when you are talking business. You have to look at the paper. You have to look at the data. Now, if you do not follow the processes, you are playing with 3 things. Number 1, you are going to lose a lot of time. You are going to get unnecessarily into litigation. You are going to lose capital. And then relationships are going to get damaged. Because if your uncle disappoints you, your brother disappoints you, you lose money, those relationships are going to be affected. I believe you did not come to Adelaide to lose money in Lagos. So, this is the defense architecture. Planning, picking, and protecting your investments. So, let's look at the plan aspect of the diaspora property formula. Before you invest, you need to make these decisions. What is the purpose? Is it yield? Is it family legacy? Is it you want to use it personally? Number 2, how long do you want to invest? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, long time. Then think about something a lot of people don't think about in investment. Your loss limits. How much are you willing to lose? Most of the time, the reason why people lose money is that they're always thinking about how much they're about to gain. If you've invested before, and I've invested in about beyond property, get ready to think about the possibility of losing money. How much are you willing to lose? And then skin in the game. If you're going to be using someone as a professional, there has to be something in it that makes that person responsible. Then we go to the picking. When we go to the picking, so planning, and then you pick. You see, you have to be able to filter a property decision through a framework. And that framework goes from macro, micro, to data. So you have to see the global picture of investment in a location. So if I'm investing in Australia, for instance, I know, oh, this is Australia. What is really happening in different locations there? Then I zoom down to some specific locations, from state to a neighborhood. Then you have to make your decisions based on data. Your decision must be data-driven. One of the things we did is that we built a platform called locationscore.ng, where if you put certain information concerning properties in Nigeria, this is designed for Nigeria. If you put certain information there, it will tell you we are not making a decision for you, but we are just telling you it is more risky to buy in particular locations. And you wonder, why do we come about such recommendation. We're not making decision for you, but we're helping you to think structurally with data. So let's go into some of the framework we work with. Now, some of these things may not be a problem for you when you are buying. In fact, a lot of them will not be a problem for you when you are buying in Australia. But when you are buying as a diaspora back home, vet people do not trust by default. And there are three critical people you have to pay attention to. You have to pay attention to the seller, the lawyer, and the agent. These three people stand between you and a clean title. You don't trust any of them by default. You see, in Australia, if I want to use any professional, there is a list. There are very extensive disciplinary processes. But when you want to make decisions back home, you put emotion and sentiment into these things. When you want to buy from a seller, you are likely to be thinking of buying from a family or a friend. No. It has to be somebody that is clearly identified to own that property. You have to check that that person has the right to sell, because we don't have as much data that we can rely on as it is here. So you have to connect the property to the person selling the property to you. Number two, you have to choose the right lawyer. You cannot use the seller's lawyer. The lawyer must not be the one providing you with the lawyer. Now, a lot of people, as simple as that is, a lot of people make that mistake. You need somebody who is independent of the process, who can look at it critically. Once the lawyer is providing you with a lawyer, you're already exposed, because that lawyer is going to be acting for that person's interest. You should bring your own lawyer. Now, when you're talking about agents, here I also hold an Australian realtor's license. So I know I have to renew my license. They check my 100-point ID. In Nigeria, for instance, everybody can be an estate agent. So your uncle will raise up his hand and says he's a property person. It doesn't belong to any professional association. You should deal with someone who has the requisite qualification, belongs to a professional association in Nigeria. You know, there are people who mistake the outcome for processes. Oh, they say, I bought 10 lands through relationship and there is no problem. You are really not smart. Do you know why I say you are not really smart? Because one day, that your carelessness is going to make you to lose a lot of money in the future. The fact that you are getting away with lack of processes doesn't mean that what you are doing is right. You need to know processes and follow them. You can't be buying properties randomly from anybody that just bring to you. They must have those protections. Because in Nigeria, we have professional associations. Members of those professional associations are careful to make sure they protect their licenses. Your uncle has no licenses to lose. And if your uncle sells the wrong property to you, you cannot send him to jail because it's going to become a family outcry. So you're going to end up losing money and damaging relationships. So if you have been getting away with it, you are so lucky. But one of these days, it's going to cost you. Get used to following processes. Vet the people. Do not trust by default. And these are some of the 5 document flaws that you check. So if you're buying property in Nigeria, like I said, here in Australia, you don't have these challenges. But in Nigeria, you have to face all these things. You have to check the survey plan. The survey plan ensures that the land is at the right location. So when the person is giving you a document, the surveyor who is trained will check that the coordinates of that property is the location the person is telling you it is. You need to check. You need to also check that it has the requisite government documents. We have governor's consent, we have certificate of occupancy. You need to make sure that the person who is selling to you bought it with the right document from the person who sold to them originally. You need to be sure that the person has paid the requisite, what we call here council rate, is called land use charge. You have to check that they pay. Why is that important? If you don't check, there is no problem. After you have bought, you will pay the backlog. So, council rates here is like you buying a property here and they have accumulated 2 years council rate. I'm sure it's not going to be a small amount of money. So the difference is that it's difficult for somebody to get away with 2 years non-payment of council rate in Australia. But somebody can get away with 2 years of non-payment of council rates in Nigeria. Why? Because they will just be penalizing you. The penalty will be accumulating. You are talking of a population of over 240 million. So before they get to you to check that you are in default, it can be 2-3 years after. So if you buy without checking, that as you are buying, you are buying an asset, the liability also transfers to you. God help you with the money. So you have to check. So you have to have a contract shield to protect yourself. That's why you need professionals. You need a lawyer. Because the contract shield in the documents, a lawyer that is why you need your own lawyer, not just anybody's lawyer. Because your lawyer is going to put some clauses there to protect you. Your lawyer will put inside it that the vendor is guaranteeing that they are selling you a genuine property. And if they don't sell you the right property, if there's any problem in the future, they have to refund your money. They will be responsible for the legal fees. So I'm sure you know that anybody is going to think twice before signing off on this type of document. So you need a contract shield. And if you use the seller's lawyer, he will not put all those terms in the document. But when you use your own lawyer, they will put all those blocks there to protect you. There are other terms that we put inside the document that we put. And so once the person sees it, the person said, I better think twice. That's why you need that. So the diaspora property gateway, once money leaves your account, you're already disadvantaged. So before the money leaves your account, you need to go through this gateway. So the diaspora property formula is trying to protect you before you make the decision. So the gateway of defining your goal, making the right choice of the location, verifying the title, making sure the contract is written in your favor, and then you transfer the money. And then after that, you go to the final one, which is you protect, which is you register your title with the government. Your name is there. Nobody can sell it behind you. You are protected. You do not skip gates. You do not pay before a gate. Every step must be unlocked before you move forward. Once money leaves your account, your bargaining power is gone. You are in 2 continents. You are here, you are there. It's possible for you to grow and make money and build wealth both ways. This is not financial advice. We've said it several times. But you have to calibrate your season in life. You see, when you are young, you can spread your wings at a particular point. But for a lot of us, as we get to a particular age in life, we are going to discover, I want to have huge presence back home. There are even people, Nigerians, who relocate back home. So you have to be flexible. Instead of building the wealth and waiting and saying, I'm going to wait until this age before I do that, you begin to build gradually. At a stage, you may be deploring more here because you are here now. So you need to have a home here rather than pay somebody's mortgage. So, but you don't do 100%. Probably you do like, for example, 70% in Australia, 30% here. When you build this place to a point, you start building that place more. When it is time for you to retire back home, you increase the amount you are investing over there in preparation for your retirement. So calibrate according to your season in life. So this is a compounding system whereby you walk both sides of the angle, Australia and Nigeria. So 1 year from today, you will either be an interesting story or statistics, or you'll be glad you attended today's training and you master the 3 foundations of the diaspora property formula, which is plan, pick, and protect. Okay, you can follow me on social media through all these. You have all these places where you can follow me on. You can also make these 4 strategic moves. We've got Michael here, we've got Otto here, and there's the free property checklist that can be a guide for you. The QR code is there. Download it, it's free. It has all these questions that you ask. And, you know, I've seen people, somebody was about to do a deal of cash. We do a lot of cash transaction in Nigeria going into whether it's hundreds of thousands. So this one is 320,000 deal. The person used the diaspora property formula as a guide, saved her from making a lot of mistakes. You just tick it, just follow it. We did it as a process system whereby you ask questions. And if one point is not dealt with, money does not go. But if you go through it, it will be difficult for you to lose money. We have a starter pack of materials you can see on Seller. You can check them for those of us who want that. Those of us who are interested in learning, training, we have a lot of, there's Diaspora Property Academy with lots of programs, lectures that are targeted with Nigeria in mind. You have videos and you have lifetime access. So thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much. Wow. All right. Did you learn anything new? Good. That's kind of the point of why we've put today on, so that you have 3 separate perspectives to learn something new from each perspective. And that's why we got together today. And although I know this last section was specifically about investing in Africa, I saw parallels to the experiences you're talking about with investing back to my country in Serbia. The story you talked about, oh, my uncle knows a guy and we can go this way, and happens all the time in Serbia. It's very, very much a culture where that, I think you could extend this beyond Africa. This formula could definitely work back home. My very passionate mum at the back was like, yes. So shout out, by the way, to my mum for dedicating her day here. She gave up some valuable grandchild time to do the catering, so thank you so much for being here. Now, what you see on the screen is that we are about to do all of those questions that you might have burning in your mind. If you've written them down on your phone, get ready, we're about to do them. So I will invite all 3 of our speakers to come on up and join me on their chairs. Come on up. For you. I think should be on now. Fabulous. Now we will go into the audience in a minute for some questions, but I've got a few to get us started. Firstly, thank you so much for dedicating your Saturdays and giving up your brand new baby time, newborn, to be with us, and congratulations on the newborn. But thank you for giving us your Saturday to share your insights so that everybody in the room can take that away and put it into action so we can build our own nest eggs and wealth. But to start with, and this is in no way to suggest you're old, but if you were to look at your 18-year-old self and go back in time, way back, what advice was the one piece of advice you would have given 18-year-old self then that would have made a big difference now? Perhaps we'll start here and go down.
I think I would say, number one, start early, follow fundamentals, and think long term.
Very good. So if anyone has an 18-year-old in the room, get them to start early. Good.
Hello? Sanya, I think that slide on the money, how long it double, 31 days to get to $10 million from 1 cent. Delaying gratification, like,
Yes.
could have been easy to grab the $3 million, but if you waited time, it was well past that.
From 5 million
yeah.
to 10 in one day.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what do you reckon it'd be in 2 months, right, if you use that same thing? So,
Right.
yes, the power of compounding.
Well done. Thank you. Your advice to yourself?
My biggest advice to 18-year-old Michael would be don't get into bad debt. Bad debt is, I like that car, I like those toys. I don't know how much money I've given back to the banks over the years, especially in my early years. Save up, put money aside, and if you're going to get into debt into an asset that's going to grow and actually work for you. Don't get into bad debt.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Perhaps while you've got the mic, I might extend a question to you specifically. There's noise in the media. There's always noise about Australian property, too expensive, we're in a bubble, South Australia is going through its own growth. What's one common myth about local property you wish people would ignore?
Yeah, very much that we're going into a downturn. There's over 15,300 and something or other suburbs across Australia. So when people talk about the Australian property market, every suburb is its own market. So I say, which one? That's probably the biggest myth, that we are all one market. We're most definitely not. The Adelaide market has been quite stable, and when people are talking about a downturn, I would probably talk about market segments. So if you had a property that's 1.8 million or 2.5 million and the market goes backwards, that property is probably going to drop in value maybe 200 or 300,000. But if you buy a property at 700,000 at Paraka at some point and the property market goes backwards, your $700,000 property is actually probably still going to grow because it's at a price point that more people can afford. It's not at that high expensive price point. So generally, as a rule of thumb, that $1.5 to $3 million price bracket, that controls around 40 to 50% of the market movement. So don't be fooled when people say, oh, the market's going backwards. It's like, yeah, but which market?
Okay, that's valuable insight. Thank you so much. Now, if we're going to get that clarity and start investing, then that starts raising the question about protection and risk. So Arthur, if I was to ask you today's theme about guarding what you own, what's the biggest mistake investors make when they start building their wealth when it comes to neglecting asset protection and risk?
I think one of those, I think it was the second last slide on structuring, because there's no point building some asset in a structure or in your own name and then you need to sell it and pay all this capital gains tax. So having the right structure in place. But and of course you need the advice from an accountant and a commercial lawyer to help with that too. And the second thing is, which is obviously what I do every day, is the risk insurances. Like if you take out debt, it's wise to have some protection in place. So in case something happens, that your loved ones can pay out the mortgage and keep the investment. So having insurances in place, whether it's income protection, life cover, disability cover, critical illness, trauma cover. So in protecting those things that you've taken many years to build.
Yeah, my wife reminds me I'm worth more dead than alive.
That's hilarious. She's the sweetest girl if you ever meet her, but love that. Now, keep in mind, we're going to put a mic in the audience in a minute, so get ready to ask your questions. I might just throw one more this way. Abby, given the current market that we've just talked about and that some people are making mistakes, now let's talk about a lens of opportunity. So if you were to suggest, look, there's interest rates consideration, global shifts, inflation, all the things that we are aware of, what do you see as the greatest opportunity for investors over the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, I think that over the next few months, I think still, when you look at it, property is a little bit stronger, has a stronger chance to weather what people are thinking could happen. When placed side by side, certain investments. So I'm going to, like you all know, this is not, this is not financial advice. We are just analyzing stuff. So if you put your money, for instance, in stocks and shares, for instance, at a very risky time, or when there is a projection that the economy could crash globally, that is the fear. Now, from experience, the possibility of the stock market losing a significant amount of money overnight is far higher than property coming down at that rate. It has not happened before. So you can't, it's difficult to see property worth 700,000 become 350,000. It's very rare. It's next to impossible, really. But for a share market of a good company, just because of fear and the economic news, that is worth $100 per shares to become $10, that happens a lot. So whenever the economy is being projected to be disrupted, you have to be very careful about such type of thing that could make you lose money suddenly overnight, because it may take years for them to recover.
I'm going to play the long game on some of that. My very European family have a safe as houses mentality, whereas my kids' investment portfolio is exclusive, aggressive shares. And I love that because they've got time, right? They've got time ahead of them. Now, I will throw this mic into the audience. I won't throw it at you, but I'll come to you. If you do have a question that you'd like to pose for anyone on our panel, or a challenge even. So if you've got anything you'd like to ask of our panellists, please let me know and I will come your way. I'm going to start just over here. Thank you for getting us started. What's your question?
I don't know if it was only me, guys, or you as well, but when Arta was explaining about 1 cent going berserk, how did that happen? I did not understand.
The 1 cent story you were telling? If you just put it in layman's terms for my mum, how that
Layman's
occurred.
term. Actually, it comes from an old fable where a prince went to a king, and because he did some really good work, he said to the king said, "You can have anything you want. What can I give you as a reward for the work you did?" And he said, "How about if we have 1 grain of rice on a chessboard, right, that had 64 pieces, and doubling every time it goes through every checkerboard." What he didn't realise is that they didn't even have that much rice to be able to give him, so it was an astronomical number. So Mum's asking in relation to
how it doubles, how you got to that doubling strategy. Compounding, yeah.
Yeah, so compounding works like that. It's exponential. So 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and all of a sudden that number just becomes astronomical. If we went into month 2 of that exercise, we start hitting like numbers in the billions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
this is why I have a little shares account for the kids.
Yeah.
This is why, for that reason.
But the key thing there is time.
Yes.
And if you were to, instead of thinking of it as 31 days, imagine if that was 31 years, and really, even like someone like Warren Buffett, who Debbie and I had an opportunity to go and see back in 2019, a lot of his wealth didn't come till he was into his 60s. Yes, he was very wealthy, but because he's lived a long life and into his 90s, he became one of the richest people in the world. So it's a matter of time, and can you let that time pass to hit that point where it hits a critical mass.
Yeah,
I hope that helps.
Fabulous. I've also seen examples for anybody like myself who has very, very small children. I've seen examples of teaching compounding interest with lollies. So you give them 2 lollies, you say, do you want to eat them both? Or eat one now and leave one in the box, and if it's still there tomorrow, I'll put another one. And you want to eat one now? Leave them, now there's 2, I'll put 2. And when you start teaching them just with something as simple as lollies at the age of 4, if they can start getting the concept of compounding interest, then the delayed gratification as well, the time associated, it's such a valuable life lesson for young children to learn about interest, even at the age of 4. So, highly recommend. Any other questions while I've got the mic on the floor? Let's start here.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Goodness, and very, very lovely insights today. I'm sorry, but I have 3 questions, so I'll start from Otto. So my question for you is, if you have nothing, let's say everything in your bank account is $100, what are you going to do differently? Like, what will you do to earn more money? Then for you, I'm going to ask you, based on your experience, if you can share one experience of something that you regretted when you were investing back home, like maybe an experience that maybe beat you at the back. Then for you, I want to ask you, most of the presentation you did here today was focused on buying a building with the bank. What's your advice on buying land and building your own house? Like, based on your experience, which one is more profitable?
Thank you so much. You each have a question now, which is fabulous. So
Yep.
regrets, starting with very, very little, starting with nothing, or like the base level of investments. And for Michael, purchasing property. Oh, established versus building and strategies and benefits. Yep, okay.
So
We'll
sorry,
start with-
just to clarify, the first question was if you have money in a bank account, what should...
But you're starting with minimal. You're
Yeah.
starting with $100. The entry-level advice for someone who's starting with very minimal capital.
What to do?
Starting with $100.
Yeah, what to do with that money? Go and learn things. Learn about money. Learn about investing. Yeah, I think education, yeah. If someone comes to me and says, I have $5,000, what can I do with it? Go and do some personal development. Learn about yourself. The best investment you'll ever make, including someone like Warren Buffett, is he went to a library from 8 years old and read every book in the library about money or business.
Good on him.
So education, learning. Yeah.
All right, investing in yourself. Thank you. Abby.
My greatest regrets when I started, I've been investing for years anyway, but the regrets I had in the past in real estate, because I've been investing for long in real estate, were properties I bought without going there to inspect first. So when you see me talk about the diaspora property formula, I'm talking from experience because I'm an investor. I'm not just a lawyer. I've been investing while in school. But most of the worst property decisions I made was buying properties, paying for it without stepping on the ground to look at it. So let me stop there.
I like the idea of going over there and seeing it with your own eyes. Thank you. Established versus new builds.
Yeah, I'm going to leverage off what Abby just said as well. My first investment property was in a mining area. I bought it for $320,000. I sold it 10 years later for $230,000, and I never stepped
That's the
foot in
wrong
it.
way.
So
Those numbers went the wrong
so
way.
that's why I do what I do, because I help people get educated around not to make the mistake I did. I guess what they say, when you win, you're happy, and you lose, you learn. Yeah, I've learnt a bit. Established versus new build. So established, as of the budget night, if you were to buy an established property now, you are no longer entitled for negative gearing. Negative gearing is the loss that you can make on the property. So if the property costs you more than what you make, traditionally you'd be able to claim that loss off of your tax. I know we've got an accountant in the room who can probably confirm I'm roughly saying something correctly. I'm not an accountant, I've just got to get another disclaimer in there. But with new builds, you can still claim that off your taxable income. So if you did run the property, if the property was running at a loss, you can then claim that off your income. The model that we always deal with is new property at Equidel on the sheer fact that if you buy a second-hand car, had anyone bought a second-hand car before? Yeah. Anyone bought a lemon before where something goes wrong? Yeah. So, buying a brand new house, you are protected by the building codes. There are warranties and structural guarantees which are inbuilt as part of the national code that builders have to adhere to. So you're buying a product that if it's faulty, it doesn't come out of your pocket. Anything that comes out of your pocket affects your cash flow, and anything that affects your cash flow affects your ability to then buy again in the future. So building property or new property versus established is the way I would go.
Sometimes that strategy involves buying, as we're talking about, an established property for the purpose of the land value, knock it down and rebuild a better property. So thank you very much. There was a hand up just over here. There you are.
I just wanted to ask another question. My name is Esther, by the way. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, and I'm not sure who's the best person to answer this question. I'm just going to ask, for people or for young investors that I know we've been talking about investing in property, investing in real estate and the rest. For young investors, we don't have like you said, 200,000 sitting in your bank to deposit. So what would you advise that we do? How do we get into real estate?
Thank you so much.
I would say you have a conversation with Arthur. Because you may not be ready to go now, but young people, the sooner you can put money away and save, and don't get into bad debt, which is what I did, the sooner you're able to then use those funds, leverage and get into property. Now, you can put money into cash. However, there are other asset classes that are actually going to grow a lot quicker. I'm not qualified to give you that advice, but I'll definitely be having a conversation with Arthur. How do you accelerate that growth phase? So you might not be ready to go today, which may mean you're in a growth phase or savings phase. Have a conversation with Arthur, and he's the one who'll be able to help you get into that position down the track.
Yeah, and sometimes lenders have options with guarantors and all that sort of thing, which is separate. Yes? Would you add?
Yes, because I suppose what Michael's saying is like you need to build up a certain amount of money to be able to then get into the property market. And some people access the property market, okay, not so much since budget night to buy investment property within super. Like we have something called self-managed super funds, which is what I like to refer to as family super, where families can pool their super together. Yep. That's been a little bit restricted on investment properties, but they can still buy commercial, industrial, wholesale properties.
In syndicates.
But as a young person, if the money's not to be used for the next 4 or 5 years, because if it is, then you need it for a home deposit, then you can't have that in the share market being volatile. But if it's for a longer period of time, I would say, yes, start with an investment portfolio, yes. And it can be as simple as just jumping on Vanguard, have, where you can just start with some basic investing and investing some monies and let it grow. But give it time, yeah.
I like that you recommended that one because Vanguard is so entry level. Even I can do it. And I don't even speak finance. It's click and drag, click the button that says invest. Very simple and easy way to start. Yes. It's even with the $100 example, very easy way to start. Thank you. There was another hand up here.
Thank you. My question is for Abby because what stood out to me from your presentation was the cross-border investment and how that can protect you. But also, we should not invest off of emotions, correct? So I imagine for many people investing back home, there might be better opportunities, but just not back home, so you don't pursue them. So my question is, have you ever invested cross-border but not back home? So in a different jurisdiction with better opportunities instead of just like back home because that's where you're from?
Yeah. I consider myself a little bit more informed than the average person. So a person like me, I understand stock and share investment, crypto investment. So even just saying that should tell you automatically my investment portfolio is spread across different jurisdictions. So I'm not restricted. And I'm also well-traveled. So when you mix with a lot of people, you see lots of opportunities in different places. I was in Kenya, February, and the reason why I went to Kenya was because a client of mine has a lot of investment in Kenya and paid for my flight, my accommodation, took me to developers, exposed me to all their businesses there. So even though I didn't invest there, but I could now see there's an opportunity in this place. So I think your knowledge is important. And that's why I like what Otto said, when you don't have much money, educate yourself. Because you are only talking and acting based on the level of information you have. You are saying this is what is big because your mind has not seen other places. If you see some other places, you may be shocked that some better opportunities are elsewhere than what you are thinking is special. So get yourself informed, and then you will see other places.
Good, good. Education is key. No matter which market you're investing in, education is the key. Thank you. I might get the final question from the room, and don't forget, they'll be at their tables for all your additional questions. Anything else you'd like to raise? One here.
Sania, you are amazing. All the speakers are fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity. My question is, the government is putting so much with negative gearing changes, CGT taxation, so many things are coming up, right? So people are in apprehension mode to invest or not. Is it the right time to invest, or should we wait for 6 to 12 months to invest in properties? That's the question.
Time is of the essence. Here we are. Interesting time question. Now, you are a lender, correct? You're in the lending game, so you'd be interested what you're doing for your clients. Perspectives on whether it's the right time and who could gauge that?
Yeah, it's not a case of when to invest, it's a case of where to invest. So
even with those conditions he was talking about?
Even with those conditions, because there are markets across Australia where there is ongoing demand for accommodation, and we can see that in the current vacancy rates, in not just in Adelaide. If you looked at places which are built up and based around knowledge economy, employment, healthcare, infrastructure, the Silicon Valley of Australia, there are some areas which are really tech-based, which they just can't get enough stock. And so many people are still moving, not just from overseas, but interstate migration, where Australians are moving to live. Those areas are still growing. We're talking 10, 12, 15% per annum. So again, it's not so much when, it's just where.
Good, all right. And that's kind of the data-driven insight you talk about. There was an interesting point there about like government-led decisions, changes to legislation, etc. Outside of property, do you think that if property started becoming an issue with negative gearing, does that then present an opportunity on the other side?
You mean for other investments? Yeah, possibly. Like for younger people, like they might get into crypto and things like Bitcoin and so forth. But I'm very much a believer of balance, yin and yang, right, and diversifying. And so that core surrounded by other things, whether it be property and so forth. So the short answer is I still think it's important to do all of these things. Yeah.
Balance is key. So thank you so much for the question. Now, just before we eat our lunch, which has been set out lovely, thanks again, Mum. Before we eat our lunch, I did pull a little bit of a European today where I found out this is how we cater. How many people are coming? 1, 2, 300. Great. So I'll make that much food. So please make sure you eat lots before you go today. But as we are about to go out and mingle, network, eat, and talk to you all, what is the one thing you want everyone to walk away with in your respective fields, what's the one life lesson, one piece of advice, or the one word that makes the most difference so that they take that lesson into their next financial move?
I will like to use a proverb. And that proverb, I may not quote that proverb accurately, but the best time to plant a tree, the first time is when? Now, what is the next best time? 20 years ago. So that is the best thing I want to leave you with.
Good. Thank you.
Taking calculated risks, not just risk on its own, but calculating and, surrounding yourself with a circle of people to seek counsel from, whether it's a commercial lawyer, a finance broker, an accountant, financial advisor, property experts. I think that's really important because the question from the lending gentleman, Warren Buffett would say, be fearful when everyone is greedy and be greedy when everyone is fearful. I think at the time a lot of people are fearful, so there's probably maybe a better word would be there's lots of opportunities.
Absolutely. I love that quote. Your perspective.
Yeah, I think education is probably a theme which has gone through today, and I think you can't really go past it. And move forward with gratitude in your life as well. So even if you have a tough time, it means that the Lord's teaching you something. We've been through that with education, with property and where I'm at. So yeah, it would be education.
Fabulous. Firstly, can we thank and honour our speakers? Now, just before we go into lunch, we have a delicious door prize, which we will draw for you right now. If you've left, you don't win, but if you're here, you could. But before we go into lunch, I'm just going to say grace. Thank you, Lord, for this food that's been kindly provided. Thank you for this opportunity to learn, grow, and connect with others as we establish our future. Bless everybody in the room immensely. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, you get to draw your prize. So, could you tell us what you've got for everyone? Yeah.
So I've got a haze basket. Anyone like chocolate here?
Chocolate?
No one.
Yep.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Good try. All right. Would you draw your winner?
Okay.
Good luck.
Now, I haven't put my name in here, so I can't win.
The winner is?
Oh, I can't read that. Sorry.
Mary Akimbola.
Mary! Congratulations! Might I honour that she was the first one here, so she set up all the tables. This goes to show that God honours those who are first, right? So she came first, she set up all the tables, she served, and she wins. Congratulations. Now, yes, we're going to grab a photo together. Now, don't go anywhere. Your trade tables are at the back to connect with our speakers, eat lots of food, build some networks. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you at the next one.